The time is 10:02 or 12:03.
Good morning.
Call the meeting to order. We'd need a unanimous consent for the approval of the previous minutes. Mr. Leonard.
Leonard moves for unanimous consent of the minute.
Seconds that.
Roll call here.
Oh,
Go
You don't
by-
have to.
There's no roll call on my list.
Thank you very much, Chief.
The roll call.
oh, why is
All right, thank you.
They don't tell me to do it. Okay,
Ellen,
it?
Ruby here, Leonard,
Leonard here.
Sanchez,
Sanchez present.
Williams,
Williams present.
Roth,
Roth here.
Kenyon,
here.
Pirog, Tepi. You have quorum.
Now we'll do the unanimous consent approval of the minutes.
Leonard moves for unanimous consent of the previous meeting's minutes.
Does everybody agree?
Yes.
Yes.
We agree. So now we'll go to public comment. Just remember this for next time. If you don't put roll call on there, I don't see it. Okay, we'll do to our partners. Kane County Farm Bureau, Mr. Steve Arnold.
Good morning. I'll try to be brief. First, I want to thank the county board and the county board chair for the opportunity to sit in on one of the citizen roundtables on the discharge of firearms. Our president, Joe White, was here last month, and I think that he made the announcement that the Farm Bureau provides a professional membership to a complimentary professional membership to members of the Ag Committee. And I know that some of you are already members, but if you're not, or if you're an associate member, if you just put a little bit of information on one of these, we're happy to reclassify the membership. And as a result of reclassifying the membership, you get our weekly publication, which is very much more specific to agriculture and agriculture issues than the monthly publication that we print out of our office in St. Charles or the quarterly magazine that you get from the Illinois Farm Bureau. So if anybody hasn't done that, or if you just want to see me afterwards, if you are in the membership database, we can look you up and reclassify that membership. And if you're not, take one of these and give us a little bit of information and we'll get you on that membership list. So you get that information. Then I don't have to give as lengthy a report when I come to the monthly meetings. A couple of things. And again, I was not here for your December meeting, so I don't know exactly what President White reported. But our County Farm Bureau was recognized with an award that we seek out every year called a New Horizon Award, which is for innovating programming. And we did receive that top award this year for the installation of our prairie pollinator rain garden. And if you haven't seen that, that's about a 4,000 square foot rain garden in the shape of Illinois on our front lawn. Some of your staff was very helpful in bringing that to fruition. We may be calling on some of them for ongoing maintenance now that I've got a 4,000 square foot garden to weed, but we do appreciate that. We also rolled out something this year. We have a not-for-profit foundation that gives 20 to 25 scholarships a year. And this year we're partnering with a technology company that is hosting our information, and the scholarships, 25 scholarships in 9 different programs are all available through a QR code. So we're trying to make it easier and easier for applicants. I don't know that it's easy, but I do know that it's possible to just point your smartphone at the QR code, download the application and fill it out on an iPhone or an iPad. So we're trying to make it easier for scholarship applicants. And we have a deadline of February 15th for those scholarships. And then one more thing in terms of dates, may not affect you, but definitely affects farmers. We'll be doing a Rules for the Road program on trucking regulations that affect farmers on the 14th of March in Huntley, a little place called Moore Brewing in the Huntley Auto Mall. But that's becoming a necessity on an annual basis, as farms get larger, more trucks on the road, more regulation. So we'll be doing that in March. A few other dates, and I'll come back and talk about this a little bit further, but on February 14th, we have our annual Governmental Affairs Leadership Conference in Springfield. That's a one-day conference. You actually have information on this. I gave you two packets, and this is the one that says register today, charting the course. So it tells a little bit about the Governmental Affairs Leadership Conference, but on the back of that page, it has the agenda of speakers and breakout sessions. And at the conclusion of the day, we have a statewide legislative reception at the Abraham Lincoln Hotel in Springfield. We invite all the state legislators in. It just depends on what's on the legislative calendar for that day, whether the House appears or the Senate appears or both appear. Just drinks and heavy appetizers, but it's a good opportunity to get in front of your state legislators. And as regular or professional members, we pay the registration for regular or professional members from Kane County who want to attend, which I think is $100 registration. Sorry, we won't buy you a hotel room. We won't reimburse your transportation costs, but if anybody's interested, again, you have the agenda and the topics. Another date on February 20th, we will do our 22nd annual shopping spree for local food pantries at the Jewel in Batavia on Randall Road. Our contestants this year will be our new 83rd District State Representative Matt Hansen, a former member of the King County Board, and the new president of Waubonsee Community College, Dr. Brian Knettel. That's how I'm going to pronounce it. Knetl. He begins his duties at Waubonsee on January 30th, but he's agreed to come in and do the shopping spree on February 20th. So, and then on April the 14th to the 16th, we do our annual 3-day Touch a Tractor open house at the Farm Bureau on Randall Road. We will be doing on Saturday the 15th a legislative meet and greet. And I assume that as part of that, in addition to inviting in our farmer members and our state legislators, that we will be inviting the county board in also for that evening. So I want to thank Matt for the latest Growing for Kane newsletter. It's always got really good information in it. And then I want to talk a little bit about the second packet I gave you. And I think those of you that were here in person probably saw this last month. This is the 2017 Census of Agriculture for Kane County. So it's Kane County specific. In Matt's Growing for Kane newsletter that I think just went out last night, he reminded farmers that there is a February deadline to return the 2022 Census of Agriculture information. The U.S. Department of Agriculture does an agriculture census every 5 years. So it'll be at least a year probably before we see the 2022 results. But there is that reminder. I've included it because we reference it, as well as referencing the information on the second page, which is a Kane County Economic Contribution Study, agriculture contribution to the Kane County economy. This was prepared in 2019 by a firm out of Iowa called Decision Innovations Group. It just drills down a little bit more on the information that is in the census, but primarily just from an economic contribution angle, to let policymakers like you understand that there's value in agricultural products beyond the farm gate. And this study kind of takes that into account. And that leads to number 3. And I think President White talked about this last month also. I think he brought a draft resolution in. This is a proposed resolution for the King County Board. So we'd like to present it to the Agriculture Committee and to the county staff for consideration. The staff has access to information that I don't, particularly in terms of several of the first few paragraphs. There are some things that we guessed at, including exact numbers for the Farmland Protection Program, which is in the second paragraph. But really what this is I've often said, and Mark and Mike and others, Janice, Matt, have heard me say, I think that I believe that this is perhaps the most agriculture friendly county in the state of Illinois, if not in the Midwest. And it's because of things that your predecessors have done as county board members, as county chairs, things that he has done. So the first half of this resolution really just kind of memorializes that. The second half and perhaps as great or a greater reason for that is not just to recognize that past support, but it's I think it's really an attempt to make sure that the county is still in our corner as society grows and changes. The one thing that has changed most markedly about agriculture in Kane County over the last 100 years is livestock. When people come, livestock goes. And the county recognizes that through its Growing for Kane ordinance. Meat and dairy production are priorities in that Growing for Kane ordinance. But as a local and statewide organization, we want to make sure that that environment for the growth of livestock production is as friendly in Kane County as it is all around the state of Illinois. And so we are going to county boards all across the state in advance of possible attempts to change the Livestock Facilities Management Act, which is the act that has allowed for the growth of the livestock industry in this state over the last 15 or 20 years. I don't know exactly when that act was passed. And full disclosure, that act removes the authority, but also the responsibility for livestock siting from county boards, unless the county board really wants it. So it becomes part of regulations that are administered and enforced by the Illinois Department of Agriculture to make sure they're consistent all across the state, as opposed by local councils like county boards or city councils. And it's been very beneficial for the growth of the livestock industry. And that's very important for Illinois farmers because this is where most of the livestock feed comes from, whether there's livestock on the farm or not. So I will leave that with you for your consideration. Ideally, if the Ag Committee responds affirmatively to this or an amended version, and it's possible to get it before the full county board in March, which is Agriculture Week. We'd really love that. The other thing, two other things that I will say, on the back of the agenda for the Governmental Affairs Conference is our state organization's legislative priorities for 2023. And don't know that those will be the same as the Kane County Board, but I present them in the hopes that if there's overlap, that we can work together. And again, in a desire to fully disclose who we are and what we do and what's important to us. And these are the issues that are important to us this year in the General Assembly. The last thing I'll say, the third point on this is the nutrient loss reduction strategy, which is a voluntary effort to reduce the runoff of nitrogen and phosphorus into streams and rivers that eventually feed into the Mississippi River that lead to the growth of the hypoxic zone in the Gulf of Mexico. There's been a recent development. I know the money came from the Illinois General Assembly. I don't know how much, but Soil and Water Conservation Districts and the National Resources Conservation Service in Illinois are providing funding for 40 additional conservation planners. As I read it, my understanding is that this is longer term funding. This is not a one and done thing. And among those 40 positions, we are aware that one will be in Kane, one will be in McHenry, and one will be in Boone. So I think that's good news for farmers and it's good news for the environment. And if you know anybody that's looking for a contract position in conservation planning, they should probably talk to Patrick McPartland at the Soil and Water Conservation District. That concludes my report. Sorry for the length.
Would you give a little more depth to the shopping spree? Why do you guys have a shopping spree and what's the purpose?
Well, we started the shopping sprees, 22 years ago, I guess, on a day that the American Farm Bureau Federation used to mark and no longer does. It was called Food Checkout Day, and Food Checkout Day was the day on the calendar when the average family had earned enough money to pay for their food for an entire year.
We're gonna have to move that. Have to move it to June. or
That
July.
may be why it was abandoned. I don't know. But we continue to do it. And we've always done it to provide food for local food pantries. So our not-for-profit foundation has what we call a Harvest for All program, where farmers can contribute a portion of their harvest to a food pantry of their choice or to the Northern Illinois Food Bank. This program kind of dovetails really nicely with that. Also gives us an opportunity for introduction or acquaintance with local public officials. I think with the exception of Senator Severson, who now has a much bigger district in Kane County, every state legislator and every state senator who's served a portion of King County in the last 20 years has participated in a shopping spree. So we have ulterior motives, like I say, acquaintance and appreciation are the chief among them, but it's kind of hard to resist an opportunity to participate in a shopping spree and let a third party buy the groceries and give them to a food pantry. So
Would you guess at how much money we give to the food banks
so
from that one?
So the
About $1,000?
shopping sprees are 5 minutes minimum in length. They usually run about 7 and each contestant usually gathers, $1,000 to $1,500. Over the 22 years, it's been over 40,000 in groceries. But that pales in comparison to what we've been able to do with our Harvest for All program, which actually followed the shopping sprees. I think we started that in 2009 and at last count, that's contributed about 2.5 million meals to the Northern Illinois Food Bank and local food pantries. And to get the number of dollars, because that factor continues to change. It used to be a dollar provides 4 meals, and then a dollar provides 6 meals, and now it's a dollar provides 8 meals. So you
It's pretty.
multiple or
it's
divide
pretty
that number
exciting.
by about 5.5.
It's
And
exciting to see those carts flying up and down the aisle.
Another shameless self-promotion. If you follow the King County Farm Bureau on Facebook, we always do a live feed of that shopping spree on Facebook. So
I think Bill Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Arnold, I wanted to mention one thing and then ask a question. Mr. Sanchez brought up the point that you're meeting in Springfield on 14th, the same day we have a county board meeting. So even though many of us may want to attend, I don't think any of us will. Just thinking about
my wife pointed out that it's the same day as Valentine's Day also.
There's another reason we won't be able to make it.
Valentine's Day.
There you go. And the other question was, I read in the literature that you gave out that 95%, and then in the resolution, 96% of Illinois farms are family owned. Do you see that changing? Is commercial farming or corporate ownership coming into that play at all or not?
It's very interesting that you say that. I didn't prepare to talk about this, but I will. I think if you look at the Census of Agriculture, on the second page near the bottom, it says family farm, 92% of Kane County farms are family
And then
farms.
the next page shows 95, and then the resolution shows 96. So we're somewhere in that range.
Right, and the resolution was written at 96%, because that is the Illinois figure. But it's interesting that you mentioned that. I will tell you, and none of us will see it unless we stream a Fox affiliate for the Super Bowl, but we will have a Super Bowl commercial that runs in downstate markets, the first half of the Super Bowl, to launch a campaign that we're calling We Are the 96, or We Are the 96%. Because the perception in consumer surveys over the last 2 years shows that consumers believe that 47% of Illinois farms are family farms and 53% are corporate owned and operated. So that campaign is basically to attack that misconception or correct that attack might be a very aggressive word, but to address that misconception, because a lot of what an organization like ours does in the media is finding spokespersons. And the last thing that we want is for everybody to think, well, that's a hired spokesperson. He may say he's a farmer, but he's a corporate farmer. He works for John Deere. He works for Pioneer,
Monsanto.
and that's a common misperception. And it's fed by some of the things that farmers do because they put out test plots every year to test different varieties of seed. And so we see all these corporate signs at the end of farm fields. And it's understandable that a consumer would think, wow, DeKalb has a lot of land, because DeKalb hybrids have signs everywhere. So.
Something that came out of the AFBF convention was the an agreement with John Deere, the right to repair. And when you say, what do you mean? They weren't allowing farmers to repair their machinery. Wait a second. Even with the computers and all that, it's very technical. But there are smart people out there that can use that, but they've agreed to not fight it. They're gonna let us do it, and you can save quite a lot of money. I think it's a big win for our guy Zippy Duval, who got them to agree to it, because John Deere is pretty powerful. And
Well, they would lose the warranty, wasn't that the?
yeah, they were gonna say if you fixed it yourself, the warranty'd be no good. So, but it's a pretty good thing that they got going.
Mr. Chair, is that only for Kane County, that agreement, or is
No, it's for the whole country.
the whole country? Okay, thank you.
John Deere is a wonderful
Right.
organization, but they're out to make money just like
Like everyone
everybody
else,
else.
yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, Lenita.
So with your permission, I'd like to pass this state legislative priorities to our legislative committee so that they know what you guys are looking at.
I'd be delighted.
Well, okay then. And then this one I want to actually give to our jobs committee because it's we kind of sometimes forget ag, which is why I sit in on all these meetings now because it's fascinating to me how much we really do rely on agriculture in Kane County. And I grew up in that area, but Aurora, we forget about it. So thank you. I'll make sure that those get passed on.
Thank you.
Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mrs. Lewis, do you think that passing this on to the legislative committee, then through whatever other
Bill?
committees has to?
You have to speak in
Oh,
this,
Um,
other people to hear.
what I'm wondering is, can we get this in front of the board by March?
Oh, I'm just talking about the legislative one, not your not your resolution.
Oh, not the, okay.
Because you got, yeah, you're going to talk about the resolution next because you've got to act on that now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we need to move on the resolution if we want to get it on the county board agenda.
Yeah, so staff would be happy, with direction from the committee today to put it on the February agenda of Agriculture Committee as a formal resolution. Tweak the numbers as needed. And then that would have it on track to go to the March County Board for adoption.
Yeah, I think that would work because we'd have to go through finance at the end of February after the agriculture meeting and then move it forward to executive and then to the county board. So that time frame works. We would appreciate that.
Sure. Yep, absolutely.
Might not need a bill. They might not
I'd
need-
like to recognize that Deborah Allen is online now. Hello, Deborah.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I also ask a question since you've invited me in?
When have we ever
Uh,
denied you a question?
Can I ask the question of how in the world have 90% of Illinois farmers been able to hold on to their property? Is it elsewhere in the country that the commercial farming has been so prevalent? And are those just different circumstances elsewhere?
Arnold. I guess the first thing I would say is don't confuse family and commercial. It's family versus corporate ownership. So any enterprise,
sorry,
including a
you're-
farm, it is a commercial enterprise. I think that what makes people think that farms are corporate owned is that as time marches on, farming operations become bigger. And many of those farm operations might include 3 generations and might include a number of siblings. So they are very large farms in some cases, and some may be under a corporate form of ownership, but it's the family corporation. It's not the external corporation. So they are families that own and operate the farms.
So not like publicly traded corporations that
Correct.
we invest in the stock market.
Right, correct.
Well, some of the big time people, they own big tracts of land, but they're real people. I think that when foreign countries buy land or anything over here, they are trying to guarantee the supply of food they want. Let's say Japan.
Microphone, please.
And the cattle, you gotta turn this thing on. I turned it on. Anyway, they would want to assure that they have a supply of the beef and pork that they want, or chickens. And it's nothing cynical about it. If you know what I mean. Are we ready to move on? Talk about a recap, Janice Hill and Matt Tansley.
Going to start us off, Matt and I are going to give a presentation today about our attendance at the Everything Local Conference, which was held in Springfield last week. It was a great conference and we're grateful that Mark allowed us to attend. I want to tell you a little bit about the conference. It was the first of its kind for Illinois in that it brought together, it was held by 3 major organizations: the Illinois Farmers Market Association, the Illinois Specialty Crop Growers Association, and the Illinois Farm Bureau. So these organizations have had their separate conferences over time. They decided, let's bring it all together under the umbrella of local. And local is really important, that term. I mean, we have statewide local. We are talking about now local ownership when it comes to corporations versus outside ownership. And we're talking about local food and other products as well. Even I gave a presentation on hyper local. So that distinction is really important for all of us to understand. The other thing that I thought I might just go over is the definition of specialty crop. Now, where did that even come from? It's a federal definition. And a lot of these terms that you'll hear us use, sometimes it comes from the federal designation, because almost all the farms have to work within the federal system to some degree, and specialty crops is one for sure. Certainly USDA funded this conference through a specialty crop grant. Specialty crops is defined by USDA are fruits, vegetables, tree nuts, dried fruit, horticulture, and nursery crops, including floriculture. And they further make this distinction that the plants have to be cultivated or managed and used by people for food, medicine, or aesthetic purposes. So sometimes Matt and I will talk about local food, and we're talking about table food in that case, and that's one piece of the overall specialty crops. But of course, I'm so glad that the organizations came together, because just talking about the production side of these products only gives you a slim piece of the puzzle. Talking about the markets as well, and I'll tell you, we'll be talking a little bit about markets to give you the national overview of specialty crops. And this is based on the Census of Ag, as Steve gave you this handout. This was 2017, so we're really looking forward to what the changes will be when we get the new census figures, which will take a few years to get that, but almost 65 billion, 64.7 billion for specialty crops in the country. And 1/6 of all ag products. This is based on 2017. That's the national figure. And interestingly too, the 2014 Farm Bill, you may remember, reintroduced industrial hemp production to the United States, and that's positioned in with these specialty crops. And we're starting to see across the country an increase in acreage there. In terms of production, for Illinois, some of that figure dropped a little bit, but we are also seeing the drop in dairy in particular. So that highlights what Steve was saying about, these are not stagnant numbers, and we do see change over time. And for us to keep an eye on that loss of livestock and the reasons why is something that is being experienced nationally, but also that for Illinois, there are 3,600 specialty crop farms. So if you kind of vision across the state, 3,600 with the number of acres as 81,250. And to kind of picture that in your mind, we have here in Kane, 165,000 acres overall of cropped land, roughly. So that's not a lot for Illinois, right? It's very productive and important, but overall those numbers, but their sales are $472 million in Illinois. When it comes to markets, you may remember that Janie Maxwell was here from the Illinois Farmers Market Association. Illinois is third in the nation for the number of farmers markets. So, to me, what that tells me, even though our specialty crop acres are low, we have a huge demand for farmers markets. And we heard some of that in the presentation. And we have, that's over, if you want to get a national picture, about 8,000 farmers markets across the country, and we're number 3 in Illinois. And you think about it, we're not even California, where you have beautiful weather all year long to shop. These are generally seasonal things. So with that, I just thought I'd give you the background of what we're talking about when it comes to specialty markets. The conference itself, they broke into these themes, and so you could attend different sessions based on the theme business development. And this one probably is one of the most important reasons that they've gathered is, in this talk of corporation, non-corporation, all of these farms are operating within a business structure of some sort. Even if you're a not-for-profit, you're within that not-for-profit corporation structure. So everyone has to work within that, along with working in the seasons and all the other things that go with it. And so there were lenders there and financial institutions, along with other experts that help farmers work on this aspect of their farm. There are some things that translate directly from the overall business structure, and then there are other things that are very unique to agriculture. Food systems, of course, this is the work that Matt and I do a lot of. And then, you know, if you're a grower farmer, you can get deep into flowers, herbs, tomatoes, vegetable production, all of these things. I spoke within the farmers market session, and then now we have this recognition of urban agriculture. I will say urban, you know, you have to, that's a broad definition, from urban farming in Chicago all the way to some of our farms are considered urban. Probably we're considered urban depending on the location in general. So lots of different themes there. And then we're going to tell you a little bit more about what we learned and how it relates to the work that you're doing. Yeah. Okay, and Matt's going to go on this part.
Right, so this, to Janice's point, this conference was a combination of two previous conferences. But even in the previous versions of this conference, it's always a good opportunity to learn about state level policies, legislation, and statewide funding initiatives, and kind of figure out how that filters down and affects counties and local jurisdictions. So I do want to just touch on a few of the state level programs and legislations, and just kind of summarize a few of those. One program that was featured pretty prominently is the Local Food Purchase Assistance Program. So this is administered by USDA, but they work with the states through cooperative agreements. And the premise is to distribute funds to the states that will be used to purchase local foods that will benefit underserved communities. But it's intended to purchase product at market rate. So that is an important part of this program. And during the conference, I was able to attend a listening session on this program that was hosted by the University of Illinois Extension. So they hosted a number of listening sessions at the conference, and I believe they're hosting others around the state as well. Because right now, the Illinois Department of Agriculture is in the process of designing the criteria and the process for entities to apply for this funding, for this state share of the funding. So it hasn't quite been determined, what will be a qualifying entity. But based on a lot of what I heard, this is going to be geared toward organizations like food banks that have the capacity to aggregate food from multiple farms, from multiple organizations, so that it can be distributed to communities that need it. So this is a program that we're going to continue to follow, and certainly we're going to want to be able to plug, help farmers know how they can connect with with the sub-recipients of this program, so they can participate. Another item, this was passed last year. This was a new piece of state legislation that streamlines the process for farmers markets, for farms to participate in farmers markets. So this just went into effect the first of this year, and basically created a farmers market permit. So once a farmer completes that process, they're essentially eligible to sign up for any farmers market. So it basically creates a streamlined set of regulations that applies for any farmers market. Because previously, each county health department could have their own, unique set of policies and guidelines for what farmers need to consider. And this part of the regulation, I just want to be clear, really applies to meat, dairy, and refrigerated products, because produce is given pretty, loose requirements as far as how fresh produce can be sold. And so this also put a cap on that cost for farmers at $175. So it should make the process, because a lot of farmers do, sell at farmers markets outside of the county where they have their farm. So this just kind of makes that process easier for them. Another item, I believe I've touched on this before briefly, but the Illinois Agritourism Liability Tax Credit. So this is a program that creates a tax credit for farms that have agritourism programs on their farms. So I mean, certainly there are a number of farms in Kane County, such as Kuipers that have, activities on farm that people can participate in. So this program will cover up to $1,000 of the insurance liability premiums that these farms pay on their insurance. And this will, as it currently stands, this program will remain in effect through the end of the 2023 tax year. And then another initiative that I wanted to highlight is the Illinois Food Systems Collaborative. This is a network that started, that really came together this time last year at the Live Local conference. And this was initiated by the DeKalb County Community Gardens Network. They received some funding to start a working group. And so they contracted with a company called the FoodWorks Group, which is a consultant that does, they develop food system plans. They provide consulting services for organizations that are trying to better meet the needs of their communities and what they're looking for in terms of food access. So right now they are working to develop an asset map of resources that support local foods. So this is pretty early in the process, but we want to keep an eye on this and see if this is a resource that will eventually be of benefit to farmers and organizations that support farmers. Janice, do you want to take that?
Yes. Here we go. So this was the session that I presented in along with the farmers market manager in Peoria. And I was requested to speak because of the success that we've had here in Kane County with fundraising. And that all has to do with that resolution that Steve presented, the history we've been building for years, valuing agriculture, identifying while we use broad statistics like this, we've also done a lot of investigation on our own with qualitative and quantitative research about what's happening on the ground here with our farmers and communicating and keeping the lines of communication open, starting with this committee, but also extending. Without that, you just can't do fundraising successfully without that. And as you know, we've done fundraising from the local, but all the way up to the federal, state, federal, philanthropic, and people want to know our secrets. I didn't give them all away, but I did give some clues as to what you need to do. And of course, this board and the staff, the previous staffs have built that up over time. So that's something you can do automatically. One thing I am going to suggest, though, that we may, because one thing that we do is that we follow what's done in other states that are further ahead of us in some of the work. That's how we created our farmland protection program, right? By looking at Pennsylvania, for example. This week I'm listening in on the PASA, which is Pennsylvania Ag Sustainability Conference. I learn a lot from them. And so one of the things that they're doing there is they're doing one of these economic contribution studies at the county level, but based on local food production and the potential for that. So maybe that's something that we consider, that's the best part of these conferences is you kind of, while we give tips, we also learn things too. I also learned of a national organization that represents specialty crops. I don't know. I don't think that we've been a part of it, but they're out there advocating for the Farm Bill. And I think that's another thing that we can, if we're going to support, especially livestock and some of the new specialty crops, that we should be able to do that. The other thing that was just awesome is not just me presenting, but having our farmers there in my session, which was awesome. And then another session I'm going to talk about in a minute. So we had representation from our farmers who are all younger than me. And that's what I like to see, nothing wrong with, my age, but they're all younger, and that's all about, they are either returning farmers, beginning farmers, or from the multi-generational farms. And if we're going to keep farms, keep this local, and we're going to need to have them engaged. And so that was really awesome to see them there. And I know almost all of them have come to your meetings before. And Will Kuiper spoke in particular, and he is a newly appointed by you to the Farmland Protection Commission. So again, we're just like out in front. It's not just us that's out in front, but your farmers are too. So let's see, I want to go to one more. This is something that, to keep in mind, even though we're all feeling so much better about where things are, we're still in a pandemic. This is one of the slides that I used for my presentation. And I rely on, we can't gather all the statistics on this. I would say, though, in the first few weeks, Mark put us on an assignment to start looking at some of this stuff in the thick of COVID, which was good because that led to a couple of local surveys that Matt's done for our farms on COVID. But when you look at the national statistics in this group, which is USDA funded along with Cornell University, who's expert when it comes to local farms, the three takeaways that I got from this is that where people are spending their money and what they're doing when it comes to shopping. Yes, they've gone back to grocery stores, but they continue to shop at farmers markets and still direct to farmers. And from farmers, direct sales from farmers, and they don't intend to change that. That's basically what all that says. And so that affects projections for production, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, but it also, the pressure for more production at the local level continues to increase, and there is no sign of that changing. So how all of us can support our farmers as they go through this ramp up is the question mark. And that's directly because of COVID. Some of this was going to happen anyway, I think, from the market. Everything that we've learned, that was on its way. I think COVID just continued to push that. People want to shop local. They want to know their farmer. They want to do it from their farmer's market. Mark just sent through legislation that, helps that from helps farmers sell direct from farm. But there are other things that I think that we can all do that you'll be hearing about in the coming months about how we can directly support farmers because of this demand. Okay, let me see. I'm going to do one more slide. Probably the best session that I sat in was one where I didn't have to present. I just was listening in, and it wasn't really for me as an ag professional to sit in. It was meant for farmers, but the researchers allowed me to sit in and listen to farmers from across the state. And the first thing I'll say is the challenges, wherever you're growing, whatever you're growing, are very, very common throughout. There's a thread that runs through the seasonality of the work that they do that guides this is the first thing. The second thing, the unknown effects of climate change and how that's changing their crops and what they've previously known about their production schedule. And the third thing, which I guess I knew, but I didn't really know, is the amount in order to enter into various production channels, right? So if they're going to go sell retail, wholesale, anything other than direct to consumer, they generally produce, and there was a research study to show that they plant generally 25 to 30% more than what they intend to sell, what their contracts show. They have to do that in order to meet their contracts because of all of the other requirements that within our complex food system, they have no control over. So if you've got to plant 25 to 30% more of your product, you've got that amount of inputs increased. This world is very labor dependent, which is another challenge, which I'm sure you've heard from farmers before. And then not knowing what your product's going to be. What that ends up creating is on-farm food waste. There's a lot of attention given to consumer waste and waste everywhere else, but the on-farm food waste is very dramatic. The one of our keynote speakers talked about that and how this farm to food bank program can help address on-farm waste. It's a heartbreak for farmers to have to grow this and then plow it under. If it ends up going to the landfill, it creates greenhouse gases. So, we're doing counter to what we want. We're not feeding people. It's a real challenge. And so this one program is one thing out there, but there's really no way around it. And it really hurts the margins that the farmers are working with. So also because it's fresh and local, it's not good for very long. You're talking about a matter of days. If that at best, that the food is still fresh. So it's a big challenge. It's across the board, no matter what they're growing. And it was good for me to just kind of listen in and learn. Okay. And I think Matt and I are going to talk about takeaways.
So I think one of the big takeaways from the conference is that funding levels for a lot of the programming and initiatives that we're seeing right now are expected to remain pretty elevated through 2023. And a lot of that is kind of driven by the American Rescue Plan Fund that's kind of, filtered down and just worked its way into a number of different programs, including USDA programs and all the different pass-through initiatives. But that, that could change after, 2023. We could go back to a more normal, or more traditional spending configuration. But we also see that we are seeing a growing number of opportunities for farmers to receive compensation for donated product, which is good. And we do hope that continues moving forward. So certainly the local food purchase assistance program. I mean, that's a standing program, so that is going to be there. I mean, the funding could fluctuate. And then, as Janice had mentioned, the Farm to Food Bank program, and that's a program currently being administered by Feeding America. So that works its way through, it involves the participation of food banks. So we're gonna continue to promote those opportunities to farmers. And obviously it's important to, not just support local food production, but where we can make sure that food is accessible for everybody. I think there's one or two left. I don't know.
Okay, so I think this is the call to action. What we know, what we've been talking about is farmers need more resources and advocates, which you are, technical assistance and opportunities for more local market channels, and consumers on that side want more local food. I don't see any decrease, only an increase in that area, and how they get to the markets. And all the different types of markets that there are. So one other thing I'd like to say too is that Kane County, and this is something Steve said at the beginning, your resolution embodies that, is that Kane County has made itself known for moving as a county ahead of the state and ahead of other regions to go ahead and take the action that we need to take. We've done that throughout all of the things cited in the resolution. I think you're going to see from us, we've been working with Mark on some other initiatives, pilots that can help drive some of these topics. You'll be seeing these coming up in the next months. But while it's important to partner with groups that are moving ahead too in pilots, I think it's also up to us to customize what works for Kane County in those veins and continue to move forward. Because, just waiting sometimes for the state is not the best thing when we're already further ahead in a lot of ways. You want to add to that?
No, I just want to thank Matt and Janice for their work and for attending this conference. And they continue to bring back the best ideas and give you the county board input into how to implement them in Kane County. So it's going to be an exciting year. So I think we're happy to, if you have any questions or thoughts on their presentation, but we're very grateful to be able to send them to this conference.
We're hoping that next year we have more elected and appointed officials in attendance. There was not by the conference organizers, there wasn't an effort to necessarily reach out to local officials, but we talked about it at the recap and really hope to see you there. So mark your calendars. It's usually January and usually it's driving snow, not nice clear weather like we had. So.
Okay, is there any questions? Matt, do you want to talk about the census for agriculture?
Sure.
I'll give you mine and you can finish filling it out.
This will be pretty brief. I know that Steve and Janice already touched on this. But it's worth reiterating the importance of the agriculture census. Really, this is one of the most important, if not the most important data sources that we rely on to communicate about the status of production, the scale of production, total acres in production. It's just an incredible source of information in terms of painting a picture of what agriculture looks like in the county. And it does cast a pretty wide net too. I mean, this does include and capture any rural or urban farm where $1,000 or more of from which $1,000 or more of agricultural products were produced and sold. So this, this casts a very wide net. There were a few changes with this most recent census. So that includes some additional questions on precision agriculture, hemp production, hair sheep, and updated internet access questions. So they're, for the most part, the census is pretty consistent year to year, but there's usually some variation depending on what current issues or trends are filtering down. And so just a few key dates. So this was launched back in November of 2022 was when the census questionnaires were first mailed out. February of this year, so next month, is the deadline for getting those forms submitted. And again, we won't expect the final data report results until it's predicted spring or summer of next year. So we'll be waiting for that, and we'll certainly have a lot to go over once that fresh data source is available.
Are there any questions? I
have one question.
Oh, good.
Matt, who gets a census and how is that determined?
In terms of, well, it is mailed. So I know that, I think that USDA uses the FSA registration as part of it. I'm not sure if they're able to build a bigger database beyond that.
I guess I'm just wondering if everybody who actually farms on a micro level is enrolled in the FSA programs. So it's not
Right.
captured, right?
That's part of the big challenge to try to collect, to inform more farmers and to get more farmers enrolled into FSA. And that's part of our work upcoming. You hit right the nail on the head there.
Yeah, and there is an explanation on the census website that if you didn't receive a printed copy, that you can request one. So that's kind of how we want to spread the word to make sure that folks that that might not be enrolled, to capture as many as we can to make sure that they have an opportunity.
Once you answer a question, you're on the mailing list. And they've been bothering me for 2 weeks about it, but we got till the 6th of February. Mr. Arnold?
Can I make a quick comment in regards to Mr. Williams' question?
Sure.
I believe it was the 2012 Census of Agriculture was the first census in history where we saw a jump in the number of farms, at least in King County. And I attribute that to better census collection data and to more people that are providing local foods, responding to the census. So I don't know that that trend continued in 2017, but boys, it's nice when a 100-year trend reverses itself. So.
I'm looking for the census to influence the new agriculture bill that they're gonna start working on. And I think a lot of it is gonna be conservation and how you farm and all that, and it's a big deal for the country. Now, in your mailbox, you got this from the extension office. And in March, we're gonna have the young people come here, and you're able to volunteer to be shadowed by a young person. And they're gonna take over the meeting after we're done. And then there'll be a lunch downstairs, I believe it's supposed to be. And there's a breakfast, there'll be donuts downstairs in the morning and coffee when you go down to pick your person up. It's really pretty neat, and it's last year, there weren't as many as you would expect, but this is the Cooperative Extension Office sponsors this. Anybody else, any questions? You're gonna sign up, I'm sure, Mark.
I think typically the goal is to have them shadow elected officials, but
Yeah.
our staff, we're happy to fill in when those
All
the
want to go
resources
to
are
the police
exhausted.
attorney or the sheriff, to get out of the jail free card. But then they go around. It's a good thing for the young people. And I've met somebody at a pizza parlor who remembered coming for that. Yeah, and it's is there anything else we want to talk about?
Nope.
No? I was gonna get along with that, the 4-H people are running a pork chop dinner, April 15th. And you can get either 2 pork chops or 1 pork chop or a pulled pork sandwich. And that's hosted over at the fairgrounds. And it's all run by the young people. So everything they take in, they keep, and it provides the money to run their programs. I will give 1 ticket today to whoever answers the question. Well, this is too easy.
Maybe for you.
What percentage of farms are family owned? You got a big
96%,
target.
Yeah.
92.
82, 95, or 96.
Between
Yeah.
92 and 96.
92. Okay, who would be our recipient? Now, you want to go to this?
When is it?
It's the 15th of April.
You just,
I think it's a Saturday night.
I'll go to that, yeah. Sure.
Okay. And you have to give it back to the one you want. Okay. Because they're difference in price.
Can we buy a ticket too?
Oh, yes.
I would be
Yeah.
interested in going
Funny you should ask, young man.
because it's nice and close.
I just happened to get tickets from Mr. Bill Collins, and it's a good meal. It's like the Face barbecue meal, but it's all run by the young people. And there's a fundraiser too. You can bid on stuff.
How many board members normally go?
But
How many board members normally go to the event?
I think it'd
Half
be 2
dozen.
or 3 of us.
Oh, I think it should be a lot more.
Well, you never know.
yeah. You can-
No, you have to go in and get it. You go in the port.
What's the value of the ticket, Mr. Kenyon?
What?
What does a ticket cost?
$10 for the pork sandwich or 2 pork chop dinner. at
Buy 2
15.
tickets.
Stephen, did you want to say something?
I wanted to say that that's the same, happens during Touch a Tractor. The 15th is the evening we will do the meet and greet for legislators, and we will invite the county board members. So it will be very convenient for you to go from the King County Farm Bureau to the King County Fairgrounds.
It's
Yeah,
it's like a big
appetizers.
room full of young people and their grandmas and grandpas and parents eating dinner together. It's pretty nice. Only thing is there's no beer.
Bring your own.
Mark?
No beer, hold on.
No beer. Yeah, that's it.
It might be bring your own, Rick.
Yeah, bring your
Brews
own.
across the street. You can just go there afterwards.
Right.
Oh, Mark?
I just wanted to note in follow-up to a lot of the great information that Matt and Janice brought back, that just over a year ago, when departments were asked to submit ideas for funding for use of ARPA funds, our department submitted 5 different applications, one specifically for agriculture, recovery and sustainability. And there's been a lot of work going behind the scenes, gathering our data from the surveys, from looking at best practices from around the country. And in the next couple of months, you'll be seeing things come through the ARPA committee for use of those funds to support the needs that Janice and Matt are identifying. So because that funding is through the ARPA committee, you'll want to keep your eye on that and pay attention to some of the programs that will authorize through resolution those use of those funds for programs that are being discussed, initiatives here in Agriculture Committee. And those will end up as being resolutions at the county board level. So, a lot of the programmatic reporting is happening here, the funding support that is going to be going through ARPA committee in the next couple of months. And we're very excited because it's going to supercharge what we've been doing over the last 10 years to support local foods and agriculture by being able to use ARPA funds to really move those forward and meet those needs. So it's going to be an exciting couple of months, but I just recommend that maybe you keep an eye to the ARPA committee as well, and feel free to lend your support as those funding requests go through. Also, just really thank Jarrett Sanchez, who's chair of that committee, and Peter Phillips, who's running that program, and our EY team, because they are so responsive on taking our staff ideas, running them through the lens of eligibility, other national programs, and it's really all beginning to come together to use that money in really, I think, it can be really effective ways. So it's gonna be an exciting couple of months. So thank you.
Would anybody like to make a unanimous consent to place some reports on file?
Roth will make the motion.
Everybody agrees? Would anybody like to move to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, that was very good. See,
I second the motion.
He's learning well.
Roth,
all in favor?
aye.